Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is actually a little bit off the cuff, if I'm being honest. I had a totally separate idea in mind that I was all set to film, and this idea actually popped into my head not too long ago, and so I decided to scrap my other idea and sit down and talk to you guys about this one instead. So hopefully you can tell by the title, I still haven't figured out a title at the time that I'm filming this, what I want to talk to you all about today, but it's basically really unique romance series subject matters, and work with me through this because I'm still trying to figure out how I want to word it. But basically it is romance series that I think are set in a very unique style, in the sense to where their shared universe is something unlike other series that you typically hear of. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you read a lot of romance series especially, you'll be familiar with the typical formula in the sense of when you read a romance series that spans, a different couple every book, usually what kind of brings that world together is like a particular job, like a workplace romance. Another example would be like family relationships. So maybe every story focuses on a sibling and the couple that they become with whoever that they end up with. Another example might be just friends. I know Jill Shalvis does a lot of that, and I adore her work. So you might have an example where a group of friends, are established in the first book with a main couple, and then one of the friends gets her own book in the next book, and then the other friend gets their book in book number 3, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of like your typical MO, at least what I have read when it comes to romance series. However, there have been a few standout romance series for me that either break that mold or are like a updated twist on that. And so those are the series that I want to talk to you all about today. I have a few in mind actually, and of course, if you understand what the hell I'm talking about and you have your own suggestions, please feel free to let me know in the comments, because I'm always up not only for book recommendations or romance recommendations, but recommendations of romance books that are unique and maybe not the traditional romance that we're used to reading. So with that said, if you're still with me, let's go ahead and dive into the book series. Okay, so the first series that I want to talk about is Lights, Camera, Insta-love by Jessa Kane. I'm pretty sure I have mentioned my girl Jessa on this channel before. She writes very steamy short romance novellas. I find that her work tends to be on one side of the scale or the totally opposite side of the scale, with one side being, what the hell is this? And then the other side being, oh my goodness, I love this, it's so fantastic. Now, I actually read the first book in the Lights, Camera, Insta-love series, which is called A Dash of Spice. I'm sorry, book 2, which is called A Dash of Spice. That was my first Jessa Kane book that I ever read. And I definitely fell on the what the hell scale at first, but slowly started sliding towards the other end as I read more and more of her books. But in terms of this particular series, I like it and I want to put it on this list because I find that it is a unique structure when it comes to formulating a romance series with kind of like a shared universe. Now, what I mean by that is that this series is bound together by a baking competition. And personally, I've never read a book like that. Obviously I've read romances that have food or restaurants involved, be it that the heroine is a baker or that guy owns a restaurant, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of it being an actual baking competition, this is the first time that I've ever read anything like this, and I adore that concept. Obviously, I am a huge fan of the Great British Bake Off or all of those kind of like baking competitions. So I would say that that's actually a perfect way of describing the setup of the series. You have obviously this baking competition, and each of the characters in the book end up getting their own book in the series. So the way that they are brought together is by this baking competition. And so what's furthermore interesting is that the couples that end up getting together aren't just, the contestants finding their love with whatever random character, but instead you've got the guest judges and the competitors forming a relationship, which is also really interesting. Another thing that makes this setup really interesting is how the characters interact with one another, because in this show, and I'm trying not to give too much of it away, but I don't think what I'm about to say is a spoiler, but what's really interesting is that many of these characters in the show, if not all of them, are forced to be there, which I thought was a really interesting take. So instead of someone, willingly signing up for this baking competition because they want to win all this money, or because someone signed up to be a guest judge because they are this world-renowned baker, they are reluctant to be there. In one of the situations, one of the guest judges is forced to be there, I think either for community service or because he's trying to repair his current bad boy status because he's not doing so great in the media. And I believe the person that he ends up coupling up with is a woman whose friends tricked her to be on this show. So, needless to say, these are both reluctant heroes / heroines, and they both manage to not only fumble their way through the show, but end up finding their way to one another. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in, you like those baking competitions and stuff like that, I would definitely check this series out. I think I've read books 1 and 2. There are 3 books in the series, if I'm not mistaken, but definitely worth giving it a shot because, like I said, Jessa Kane writes novellas, and these are short, steamy excerpts, but again, very unique structure when it comes to plotting out a romance series. Okay, next up I want to talk about the Zodiac series by Gemma James. Now, I have to thank my girl Tara for putting me on to this series because she has a way of influencing me with all of her dark romance recommendations, and this book, or rather this series, is no exception. Now, as you can guess from the title of the series, this concept is centered around the Zodiac symbol theme. And by that, what I mean is that each of the book in the series focuses on a specific Zodiac character, Capricorn, Aquarius, Sagittarius, etc. But the symbols themselves are represented by each of the men in the book. Now, granted, each of the men in the book who have their own series, yes, they are brothers in a way, but I think the fact that it focuses a lot on the Zodiac aspect kind of overrides the sibling trope, that's so familiar when it comes to romance series, and it just makes it that much more fascinating. Now, I did mention that it is a dark romance, and believe me, it definitely is. I am actually not completely done with the series just yet, but I am up to book 5, I want to say, and it only keeps getting better. Now, in terms of the plot, another thing that makes it interesting is again, I'm only kind of basing this so far on the books that I've read, taking a little liberty, but what makes it interesting so far is that each of the books focus on a different brother or a different Zodiac symbol. However, the female protagonist that is paired with each of the brothers is the same woman. Yes. So in book 1, you've got, man number 1 and female A, and in book 2 you've got man number 2 and still female A, if that makes any sense. I don't want to give too much away because the setup of the story is so interesting and potentially spoiler, so I don't want to tell you too much about it, but let me just say I was immediately intrigued when I heard that it was the same woman because I wanted to see how the author was going to pull that off, especially since this book, or rather this series, is not set up in a harem kind of trope in any kind of way. It's each book is a singular couple, and so I really want to read it, or rather continue reading the series to figure out who she ends up with, if there are new characters introduced, and the Zodiac aspect does play heavily in the series as well, which is very interesting. I've always been one of those people kind of interested in like horoscopes and zodiac signs and everything like that, and the author interjects it in a way to where it's intriguing and makes you want to keep reading, but at the same time it's not like hokey or overdone or anything like that. So, you know, an example might be that one of the men, if he's a Sagittarius, really reflects that kind of personality. Obviously, the author kind of tells you what the personality type is. And so the woman is trying to, you know, basically get to know that particular brother. And sometimes it works out well, other times it works out horribly. Again, mentioning it that it's a dark romance because book one starts off very dark. You know, hero is beyond grumpy to the point of emotionally abusive, but the author does such a good job with the storytelling and the writing that you want to keep reading despite all of these red flags going off in your head. So again, that's another series that I think is a unique trope when it comes to what the series is centered around. And if you like dark romance, I would definitely recommend this series. Okay, so next up we have Jayne Rylon's Power Tool series. This series spans, I want to say, at least 8 books. It's an older series, so you can definitely find all of them available right now in case you want to burn through them all. I read not the entire series, but nearly all of them years ago, and I remember being so hooked. Now, what makes this one a contender on this list is the fact that all of the men in the series are bound together because they own a construction business together. So they're not necessarily siblings, but they are work partners. However, it's not in your typical corporate fashion that you might read about in like a billionaire romance or anything like that. Again, they own a construction group together. And one of the things that makes this the standout and gives it a place on the list is that it actually is a series that features harem and menage setups. So each book, and I'm trying to remember off bat, again, it's been some years, but each book you are going to get more than just your male-female couple. You might get multiple men with a woman. You might get multiple women and multiple men, but at the core of it, you've got all of these men who work together, essentially trying to find the right one for them. Now, if the right one ends up being a singular female, great. If it ends up being multiple, also great. But that also down the line adds to the conflict of the series because, you know, they've kind of all grown together as a group, you know, thinking that the way that they've been going in their relationships or lack thereof is fine with everybody. But as people start coupling off, that makes it a little bit more challenging, you know, to figure out how they are going to interact with each other going forward, because what they enjoy doing as a group, you know, a while ago may not work now because, you know, one of the guys is now in a committed monogamous relationship with somebody else. So I thought this one was really interesting, and the fact that it deserves a spot on this list because of the, I don't want to say taboo, but unconventional relationship status. It's definitely a lot of flames. If you like your books steamy and not shying away from the bedroom scenes, definitely check this one out. Jayne Rylon in general is just such an amazing author. It's been years since I've read her books, to be honest, but even to this day, she stands out to me as one of the best. She does erotic romance very well, and you're still, you know, very caught up in the relationship and the feelings of each of the characters. So beyond just getting like a smutty series, you're definitely going to get some depth in it as well. So this sounds up your alley. Definitely check it out, especially I guess if you like your men rugged. As I mentioned, they work at a construction company, so their crew is very tight, very manly man, if that's your thing. So if it is, check it out. Last one, I'm excited because I think it's a really fun one, is the Holiday Hunk series by Sarah Spade. Now, I actually just got turned on to this series around Christmas time, if I'm not mistaken, and the reason that I wanted to include this one on the list is because it centers around fun and traditional, I guess, American holidays. Now, this one is really interesting because, you know, a lot of romances will include holidays within them, or maybe there will be a spin-off in a series that is centered around Christmas or something like that, but I've never read an actual romance series where the books are only only focused on holidays. And that's why I think it's really unique and interesting. So for example, with Sarah Spade's books, she's got one at Christmas. Like I said, that's the one that I read. She's got one at, no, sorry. The first one I read of hers is Halloween, actually. So she's got a Halloween one. She's got Christmas. She's got New Year's, or I guess technically New Year's Eve. She's got St. Patrick's Day. So again, these are very fun books. Some of them are shorter than others. I want to say they're anywhere from like novella to short novel length. And so that's perfect for me, I think, when it comes to wanting to read romance that is themed around a certain holiday or a certain time of year, because I know, especially with like Christmas or Valentine's Day, people tend to want to read their books that are centered around those holidays just so that they can get into the spirit of things. And so these books are perfect for that. And in addition, they are so creatively done. So in some books you might get more of like your typical contemporary fiction, well written of course, and then in other books you might get a little bit of like supernatural or magical realism. So perfect example, in the holiday hunk centered around Halloween that I read, it had a little bit of a paranormal aspect to it, but by the time you got to the end, the author wrapped it up in a way that totally made sense, so that you didn't have to suspend disbelief for the entire story, or when you got to the end for the happily ever after, which I was pleasantly surprised about. Because don't get me wrong, when you are reading Halloween themed books, I'm all for, the witches and the ghosts and all of that. If I have to suspend disbelief and jump into that paranormal world, fine, that's totally okay with me. But she ended up turning things around to where the characters had a realistic happily ever after, which was so sweet. Definitely not something that I was expecting for what I otherwise would consider a lighthearted romance. So if you like your romance kind of thematic with holidays, or you want something that's a little bit of a twist in your contemporary romance, definitely check her series out. I guess the next holiday coming up, since we just passed Valentine's Day, would be St. Patrick's Day, so that would be the perfect opportunity to become acquainted to her work. Obviously you can read the holidays out of order if you want to, but I'm not a savage, I can't do that. Anyway, so yeah, I wanted to include that one on the list, and that pretty much wraps up and rounds out the list of series. I wanted to keep it short because those are the standout series for me, if I'm being honest. Of course, there are probably countless more. As I mentioned earlier, leave them in the comments if you have any that kind of stand out, now that you know, based on my examples, what exactly I'm talking about. But like I said, I wanted to kind of get on here and ramble a little bit about these series that I find unique, because, I love romance series. I typically flock to like contemporary romance or paranormal romance, but at the end of the day, they typically have the same series trope, in the sense of, whatever theme kind of binds all of the books together. But, every now and then I come across something that's very unique, that stands out for me. And so I don't want the uniqueness of it to kind of overshadow the writing as well. So let me just kind of point that out. Each of the series that I've mentioned, they are well written as well. So you're not just going to get a series that is, what am I trying to say here? You're not going to get a series that's just like unique for unique sake. It's gonna have some substance to it when it comes to these books. So I hope you do check them out. If you do, or if you have read any of these, please let me know in the comments. If I had to kind of rank them, I would definitely say check out the Zodiac series first. It's hard for me to say that because I could easily change my mind and say a totally different series tomorrow, but I've been hooked on that one and it has been standing out in my mind forever. And I'm just obsessed with it currently. Maybe because I like looking up my astrological sign and my horoscope on a day-to-day basis. But anyway, I'll go ahead and end it here before I continue to ramble. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Happy reading. Bye.